The sound you hear is howling Arctic winds. This is the start of Octoberpod. I'm Amber Jourdan, real-life witch and one of the writer co-producers here at Octoberpod. I'm also co-host of my own podcast, Witches Talking Tarot. And as you can hear, I'm on location with my portable podcasting mic at King William Island, Northern Canada. I just turned in a draft of my latest story to Edward October. But, he's not around, and he owes me money. He's such a stinker. And so, I've been traveling the globe, trying my damnedest to find Ed, who has apparently skipped town. But this is nothing unusual. He frequently disappears to go on unplanned pilgrimages to explore spooky locations. Ed recently binged season 1 of The Terror, so I thought he might come here to retrace the steps of the lost Franklin expedition. Unfortunately, there's no sign of life for miles and miles. Like Edward, Octoberpod has been all over the world with stories set in diverse locales. While I book passage back down south, why don't you listen to an encore presentation of this international chiller? I'll be back with you in a spell, just as soon as I set foot onto my next destination. See you soon!
Purgatory Labs, written by Jane Nightshade, narrated by Nicole Engelbrecht, creator-host of True Crime South Africa.
I hadn't been back to Cape Town in 25 years. The last time I saw it was when I was 10. It was just after Mandela was sworn in as president. It was just my mom and me, living in a dingy 2-room semi-attached on the outskirts of Epping, an industrial area of Cape Town. Dad hadn't been around since I was born. We used to get a few wire transfers of money from him in England, but that stopped when I was about 4. Mom worked in an Epping soda bottling factory. On her afternoon break, she'd cycle over to my school, put me in the kiddie trailer on the back, and then pedal me off to Epping Playhouse Daycare Centre. Most of the ladies who worked in the factory sent their kids to the playhouse. Now it was 25 years later, and I stood in front of the building that once hosted the playhouse. It wasn't in operation anymore. The stucco bungalow was still the same blue colour it had been back then, but the paint was faded and peeling. The windows were covered in ugly plywood, and the door was nailed shut with crossboards. I shivered a little in the blistering sun, remembering my last days at the centre with little Quircy, my only friend. He was a boy of 7 who'd had some kind of bone disorder, and as a result he was very small for his age. Still, he had the brightest smile and the sweetest nature of all the kids at the playhouse. The 2 of us laboured happily in the sandbox outside the centre for hours, building an imaginary world of castles and kings. The playhouse wasn't a terrible place. The minders were, for the most part, kind and cheerful. But then there was old Willie, who worked in a large potting shed that occupied the other half of the bungalow. He specialised in hybridising and grafting plants for nurseries, seed companies and other customers who wanted their own custom designer plant, shrub or tree. His little business was called Willem's Speciality Growers, but he had an old peeling sign up on the back wall inside that read, Purgatory Labs. He told kids that the bungalow used to be a government research facility during World War II, and that was its nickname. Old Willie didn't like us kids at all. We were too loud, even though we tried as hard as we could to be quiet. Some of us, though, would peek through the murky windows of the potting shed, trying to see what was going on in Purgatory Labs. Willie really hated that. He'd come outside steaming with rage. He tried to build a fence around his side to keep us out, with the big trespassers will be prosecuted sign, but the landlord wouldn't let him. Kusi was fascinated with the potting shed. I used to pull him away whenever he tried to look through the windows. We always avoided Willie's wrath, until one day, Kusi and I went inside the potting shed. We knew it was wrong, but the shed looked deserted and we thought Willie was away somewhere, calling on customers. We found the door unlocked, and the next thing you knew, we found old Willie snoring in a corner, stinking of whiskey. We both held our noses as we crept by him. Kusi almost giggled, but caught himself as I gave him a stern look to shut him up. He clammed up after that. We passed long rows of plants and shrubs in pots. Some of them looked really strange, like a flowering tree that had tri-coloured blooms on it, pink, white and blue. Then we came to a side wall where the peeling old Purgatory Labs sign was posted. Next to it was a door to another room. Of course, we had to open it up and go inside. The small room held a jungle of sorts, all mouldy and wet. There was moisture trickling down the plaster. Small greenish windows also beaded with moisture, let in dim, sickly rays of sunlight. The potted plants in this room were much larger than the ones in the big main room. They loomed far above us and blocked most of the light out, making the room dark and shadowy. Some of the plants had long shoots or vines that clung to the walls and ceiling and were intertwined with other plants. Some resembled carnivorous plants, but much larger than I'd ever seen. They all looked weird, and some even malevolent, as if they had minds of their own. Kusi tugged on the bottom of my t-shirt. He told me he was scared and wanted to go. I agreed and we quietly crept out. We turned around toward the door, and that's when I saw the biggest, nastiest looking plant of all. It was in a corner near the door, and we hadn't noticed it when we'd first come in. It gave off such an air of menace and deformity that I stopped dead in my tracks. It grew all the way to the ceiling and spilled out onto the floor as well. Big celery-like stalks sprouted thick, hairy vines. From some of the stalks hung several huge seed pods, or possible cocoons, wrapped all around in smaller vines, like a spider wraps a fly in its silk. We were trying to sneak by this hideous thing, hand in hand, like we were trying to go around a sleeping panther or a coiled snake. And then, quite suddenly, a ropey vine snaked out from the giant plant and grabbed Kusi by the ankle, wrapped itself around and around halfway up his little leg. Kusi let out the most awful screams. I squeezed his hand and began screaming too. I was so scared and I had no idea what to do. The door opened and old Willie burst in, red-faced and angry, murderously so. He roared curses at us. I didn't hear much of it, because I blacked out from fear, just as terrified by the sight of Willie as by the plant that had seized Chauncey. When I woke up an hour later, I was on my afternoon nap cot outside the playhouse. My mom and Mrs. DeRuit, the manager of the playhouse, were hovering over me with worried faces. After I made them understand that I wasn't sick, I learned that Chauncey was missing, and they wanted to know what had happened so they could find him. I told them about the grabby plant, but they dismissed it as childish foolishness. I told the same story to the police and scores of others. I was made to see therapists and child psychologists for years after the event. They all tried to convince me that the detail about the living plant had been a child's hallucination, perhaps a defense mechanism against the horror I felt over what I might have really witnessed of Chauncey's disappearance. Rubbish. I saw what I saw. The police also questioned old Villy, of course, but he claimed he didn't know anything about Chauncey's disappearance either. He swore that he'd left Chauncey with me after I'd fainted. He said he'd gone round to the front of the bungalow to get Mrs. DeRuit. Chauncey was gone when they returned to us. His story didn't change a whiff after endless repetitions. We looked for Chauncey for months, Mom and I. We joined police search parties and helped put up flyers. Nothing panned out. Even after the fruitless official investigation ended, we carried on for a long time. I was devastated by the loss of my only friend. I prayed every night, hoping against hope that he would be found. I prayed for years, even after Mom and I left for Australia. As for old Villy, the police eventually had to let him go. They'd scoured every inch of the potting shed and his house too, but the only thing they discovered at all suspicious was a dog-eared flyer for a 4-year-old girl named Gussie, who disappeared in Epping 2 years before. The newspapers made a fuss about the discovery of the flyer, but there was no real evidence tying Villy to either of the disappearances. The case remained open, but Villy was a broken man. Everyone suspected him. The landlord cancelled the potting shed's lease. The last anyone from the playhouse ever saw of him was the day he came with a big truck to move most of his exotic plants and trees from the shed. Another grower took up his lease, but soon left, complaining that Villy had left some plants behind and that there was something wrong with them. 25 years later, trembling with fear and grief, I walked around to the back of the bungalow where the potting shed had been. There was one thing I had to do, even though I didn't really want to do it. I'd prayed all these years to know what happened to Chauncey, and one day I'd had a sudden idea. An idea so powerful, I'd flown all the way from Sydney to check it out. The door of the potting shed was padlocked tight with a big iron chain, but the wooden door was quite rotted through, so I bashed out 2 lower panels, enough for me to crawl inside on all 4s if I kept my head down. I made my way to the room where that grotesque plant had stood in the corner near the door. The Purgatory Labs sign was still up, wearing 25 more years of fading. The plant was still there. It haunts my dreams to this day, but it was dead, fortunately. The stalks, vines and pods were brown and desiccated. I crunched a few dried vine leaves underfoot as I approached it gingerly, half expecting a tendril to grab me, just as it had done to poor Chauncey. But no, the plant was dead, really dead. I had to touch it to prove it to myself. Trembling, I reached out to touch one of the pods, Part of its skin broke away under my prodding. Something fell out, fell through the hole in the skin. A mummified arm with a small child's golden bracelet around the skeletal wrist. My first thought was that it was Gussie's. My heart pounded with dread and anguish as I poked the skin of the other pods, until I found the one that contained my dear little Kusi.
Welcome back! I'm Octoberpod's very own resident witch, Amber Jourdan, and my search for Edward October, who's gone off on one of his crazy horror pilgrimages, continues. In addition to everything else he owes me, I think I'm going to have to file an expense report for all the travel expenses I've been racking up. As you might have guessed from all this background noise, I'm on the fog-shrouded shores of Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. I'm speaking to you thanks to this rather ancient-looking portable podcasting mic I picked up from Ed's studio. I had a hunch that Ed might be tracking down one of his favorite cryptids, the Loch Ness Monster. But alas, our humble horror host seems to be as good at avoiding detection as old Nessie herself. Well, I have plenty of time before my flight leaves, and I'm starving. I haven't had a bite since eating that whale blubber burrito at the North Pole. I'm going to hike over to the visitor center to eat a Nessie burger. Why don't you travel through the miracles of podcasting to sunny Mexico City for an encore presentation of this Octoberpod classic, starring Octoberpod's other co-producer, MJ McAddams. I'll be back in a spell to check in with you at my next destination, and hopefully find Ed.
The world began to unlock its doors and open its windows. Signs of life sparked quickly with the resurrection of humanity. The heaviness of 5 painful years rolling away. With the worst behind us, we all started reclaiming our lives one piece at a time. The bomb, the fallout, cut a wide gash through society, claiming lives, poisoning the land. But I made it through. I am a survivor.
Templo Mayor, written by V Castro, from her original story, narrated by MJ McAddams, with YouTube's Chauncey K Robinson, host of Production Tales from Hell.
And to think, it was only a small war. Only a small bomb, as nukes go. I lived most of those 5 years in a community fallout shelter just outside the Dover Silver Lake exclusionary zone. Lockdown had atrophied my mind and will. Every night I prayed for this world to be cleansed, that something or someone would hear my pleas. Then I'd pass out on my FEMA cot in a dark corner of an open dormitory, where the stink of cabbage and the cries of fussy children were always present. I was lucky. Once I was out, and the radioactive contaminants had reached acceptable levels again, I booked a trip to see my family in Texas, followed by a vacation for myself in Mexico. To stimulate public spending, flights were cheap. Hotels, the ones that survived, splashed grand deals to lure people farther afield, at least those who could afford it. I poured all my savings into this. 3 whole weeks of hearing and seeing other people again. New people. People I loved, not displaced strangers. Perhaps I'd meet someone. How long had it been? My itinerary began in Guadalajara, followed by Veracruz. the pyramids on the Yucatan Peninsula, and finally, Mexico City. Most of my time would be spent there as I wanted the sounds of life to fill my head. Sirens, shouting, laughter, curses, the aroma of street food, live music. I wanted all of this. A fresh start. My own resurrection. It was my last day in Mexico City, and only one place left to see. Templo Mayor. Built by my ancestors to declare their ingenuity and celebrate the blood that appeased the gods. When the temple stood in its time of glory, skulls of the conquered and the pious decorated wooden stakes for all to see upon arrival. This was a monument intended to awe and instill fear, a place of sacrifice and burial ground for its victims. Today, only the ruins remain, a headstone to a vanquished civilization with its people absorbed by the ground or dispersed like seeds blown by a strong wind. I am part of that history. A 50-50 mix of conquistador and the conquered, according to one of those mail-order ancestral DNA tests. I bought myself one as a Christmas present, the last Christmas before the bomb. My body pumps mestiza blood, and ever since I was a child, I had a deeper desire to immerse myself in a culture I knew I didn't fully understand. Years ago, before the bomb, I visited the catacombs in Paris, which were just as macabre as this place. However, I didn't pre-book a tour and had to wait in a miserable cold drizzle for an hour. When I had the chance to finally descend the staircase leading to the portion of the catacombs still open to the public, I had to push past other tourists to read the well-lit signs telling us the history. It was a unique experience, but too many people to take your time. For Templo Mayor, I arranged for a private archaeological tour with a small group. I thought perhaps we could spend a few evenings together if we got along. Maybe make some friends. Many of my close friends were gone. A few of them died in the initial impact. Most succumbed to radiation sickness. Another chose suicide. My heart ached, grieving those losses. As I waited for Gabriel, a PhD student from UT Austin working on opening unsealed chambers of the temple who would be my tour guide, I scanned the blackened remnants of the temple that sits in the center of a busy city. I shuddered imagining what it would have felt like to be led up the great stairs that would have been brightly painted to be gutted and consumed. Or, what if I was a priest, thinking blood was the answer to the world's problems? He stood with the setting sun to his back. The strawberry blonde hair highlighted his soft brown eyes. He was better looking than the selfies on his outdated blog. I wonder what his touch would feel like. I had lived in desperation far too long.
You made it.
You won't believe it, but the others canceled. Too much partying last night. It's just us. Hope that's okay.
They're lost, I suppose.
He looked so good I didn't care that I'd be alone in the dark with a stranger. Quite the contrary, in fact. My phone was fully charged and I felt comfortable in this city. I found it curious he was the only one offering such an off-the-grid tour, but every city had some element of that.
Work stopped on the excavation recently. They found something extraordinary. These little tours provide us with extra cash while we're here. Most academic research being done these days was funded under the guise of cancer research, for obvious reasons. Even one of our grants contains a provision to look within the ruins for a rare mold which may have cancer-fighting properties. We're going to enter the site through that cathedral. You see it there?
Another monument to sacrifice and blood. An attempt to explain what is unknown. Christ did tell the disciples to drink his blood. Priests self-flagellated until their backs ripped open. The church lay as silent and still as a bedtime prayer. Not a single person sat in the pews. The candles flickered as we entered with the faint scent of incense clinging to the air. I couldn't help but notice the drop in temperature. This cold, it's uncomfortable. I should have brought a sweater.
I should have warned you to dress more warmly than one normally would for Mexico City.
He led me to the bolted wooden door at the back of the church. He took a key attached to the side of his red, white, and blue backpack. Quaker colors. What's with the U-Pin backpack? I thought you were from UT Austin.
Oh, that. Heh. I grew up in the Alleghenies, so all of my friends went to UPenn or Penn State or Carnegie Mellon. I was the black sheep. I hitched my wagon west. Be careful going down the spiral staircase. It's more narrow than you'd think.
The stone steps looked ancient with a string of lights overhead. I followed his lead through the cramped space. The air felt warmer and wetter the farther we descended. I could smell the damp and a sour staleness in the air that was too strong to ignore.
Watch yourself. This tunnel's only about 5 feet high at the bottom. I find that I fit easier with my backpack slung in front of me.
I can fit easily, though, if I crouch. More tunnels, huh? Wow. Do you know how many tunnels connect to this chamber? My mouth was open in wonderment, and I stepped farther into the room. Stones carved with the images of gods lined one wall. Skulls and bones neatly created adjoining walls. You could see the jagged seams of the craniums, some with large gashes from a head blow. Black pits that once held eyes stared back at me.
Bring her back. A final sacrifice to bring her back.
I turned to see a flint blade with a bone and turquoise handle in his hand. Those beautiful eyes that drew me in were as black and hollow as the skulls watching us now. His body blocked the tunnel leading back to the church. I was trapped beneath the city, inside a temple used for this very purpose.
You allowed yourself to be led to your own grave.
There was only one way to go, deeper into the tunnel. I had nothing on me to fight with. I bolted towards a light hanging by a wire attached to the stone, all down one of the bone-lined tunnels until I could see clothing crumpled on the ground. The dirt surrounding the severed body parts glowed bright crimson, but not wet. The flesh appeared freshly torn. My eyes widened at the sight, fully understanding what I was seeing. A physical representation of the great stone disc found here.
Did you find it yet? One of the greatest finds ever, isn't it? Truly magnificent. I recreated it in flesh.
The decapitated and dismembered parts of a woman lay in a circle. It is the story of Huitzilopochtli. Huitzilopochtli burst from his mother's body as a full-grown man. Huitzilopochtli killed his siblings and dismembered his sister. Her head flung to the sky and became the moon. I tried to control my gag reflex and fled because I wanted to survive. The past 5 years had taught me that. I glanced back. Gabriel was following close behind as if in a trance. He knew I had nowhere to go. Panic and fear surged, pounding in my head and neck. I don't want to die. Give me the strength to live. Show me what I need to do. The deepest trench in my heart acknowledged this was most likely a futile ask. No ears listened down here, just as I knew no one heard humanity. It still made me feel better to utter the words. Ahead, I could see the tunnel diverted into a dark space. Perhaps I could hide. Maybe I could wait until morning when work resumed. I ran towards the dark that was beginning to consume the illumination from the single light. I put my back to the wall, feeling stone and bone beneath my fingertips. I inched deeper down the dark tunnel until my hand hit something hard, wooden. I bent down and grabbed it, bringing it to my chest. The top felt metallic, both ends spiked. Some luck. The only sounds were his footsteps, his voice, and the distant din of cars above my head. Sweat slid down my spine and between my breasts. I couldn't tell if it was from the ambient temperature or my fear bringing a sudden fever followed by chills. 1,000 breaths of the slain uttering their last words upon my skin. A light approached with his steady voice. He had a flashlight attached to his head. I moved deeper until I hit another wall. A dead end. I would have to fight. Blood would be spilt, but it wouldn't be mine. In the light, I could see I held a pickaxe. It was small, the kind you use on soft dirt or rock. It would have to be enough. Come closer and I will use this. He cocked his head with a wide grin, exposing his teeth like a predator, before rushing towards me, dagger in hand. I raised the pickaxe, ready to strike. My entire body tightened. Before he could reach me, I swung with all my strength, screaming out my fear and grief in the process. My heart burst at the veins, and my scream didn't stop until it pierced his skull. He slumped on the ground. Blood oozed from the wound in a steady stream, and brain matter clung to the tip of my axe when I yanked it out. But it did not pool. The earth soaked the red liquid, drinking it with vigor. As I watched, I could feel breath against my neck, and my skin turned hot.
Mestiza blood, you have arrived. Many thanks for the final sacrifice. You shall be my new priestess.
I turned to see a woman, her skin as brown as mine, with glowing moons for eyes. She looked like the relief found in the temple. Naked to the waist, her full breasts hanging low. The moonlight in her eyes pulled me towards her like the currents of a vast ocean. My thoughts were no longer my own. In her eyes I saw the end of it all. Death to the world. The war, the bomb, fallout, all the suffering we had experienced was but the first wave of many. I fell to my knees in piety.
Yes, may the new cycle begin.
Somewhere the sun shines, somewhere the birds sing the glory of a new dawn, somewhere it's spring again. But here it's always Halloween. It's the Rogue Transmissions halfway to Halloween hullabaloo. Rogue Transmissions, an unhinged anthology of indie podcasts, is invading your streaming device to throw a hell-raising halfway to Halloween party. Featuring all of your indie podcasting favorites, including Brew Crime, Chick Lit, Octoberpod, our true crime podcast, Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' Boutique, Spine Chillers and Serial Killers, Serial Napper, Twisted and Uncorked, and Witches Talking Tarot. It's coming Tuesday, April 29th to this podcast. That's right, the Rogue Transmissions halfway to Halloween hullabaloo is coming to the podcast you're listening to right now on Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. Rogue Transmissions. Rogue Transmissions. Rogue Transmissions! Halfway to Halloween hullabaloo. List of participating podcasts may vary. Intended for external use only. Enjoy Rogue Transmissions responsibly. Void where prohibited.
Again. I didn't see you behind all that tall elephant grass. When I didn't find Ed at Loch Ness, I thought I might find him at the home of his other favorite cryptid, the elusive brontosaurus-like creature known as Mokele Mbembe. I hope I'm saying that right. Anyway, that's why I'm here in the Congo River Basin. This is quite the game of hide-and-seek we're playing. I'm starting to think that Ed is paying off the locals and telling them to throw me off his scent. I'm worried that I'm now more likely to come face to face with a living dinosaur before I'll ever bump into Ed again. But I haven't given up on him yet. There's a watering hole in a tiny village a few miles down the river, and I have it on good authority that it serves one of Ed's favorite cocktails. I'm hoping to find him there. Meanwhile, we have one more encore presentation of an international spooky story for you, and with any luck, I will have found Ed by the time you're done listening to it. I'll talk to you again in a bit.
A Haunting in Normandy, a true paranormal encounter submitted by the woman who lived it, co-host of Spine Chillers and Serial Killers, and a British expat living in France. Thank you for joining us today, Emma.
Thank you very much for having me.
I understand you and your family have been experiencing a haunting. Tell us about it, won't you?
As most of you know, I have been in the past quite fascinated by all things spooky. I was a horror film buff, loved a good book about true hauntings, and for many years I was a goth. And during that time I learned something. Kids are creepy. Especially little girls. Although granted, Damien from The Omen wasn't exactly a ray of sunshine. But generally speaking, if there's a little girl in a horror film, you know at some point she's going to be climbing up walls or projectile vomiting over priests. That's just the way it is.
I can vouch for that. That does seem to go on. That really does seem to happen.
Bearing this in mind, I can't deny that when I found out I was pregnant with my eldest, somewhere in the back of my mind I had that uneasy thought. What if she turns out to be creepy?
Understandable. I mean, what parent hasn't?
I know, right? Of course, the second she was born, that thought vanished entirely, and I was completely wrapped up in how frigging adorable and perfect she was. She was quite possibly the most beautiful baby in the world ever. Okay, I might have been a bit biased, but you get the idea. Not a creepy bone in her chubby little body. That is, until now. She's now coming up to 4 years old. She's extremely bright and extraordinarily eloquent for her age. This means that sometimes she comes out with things you wouldn't expect a child her age to say. Up until now, when she has said something surprisingly clever, I must admit I do tend to be incredibly proud and secretly smug. Ha! My child is a genius. What good parents we must be. But recently, I have kind of been wishing she wasn't quite so eloquent, as some of the random clever things she's been saying are truly terrifying. I mean, like, stomach churning. We're going to need an exorcist terrifying. It started maybe a month or two ago. She started talking about Leo, her invisible friend. Wonderful, I thought to myself. Imaginary friends are creepy AF. And this is always how it starts in the films.
Captain Howdy from The Exorcist comes to mind. And Jody from the Amityville Horror. Tony from The Shining. Well, the list goes on and on.
Now, I knew she had a friend at school called Leo, so I just put it down to an overactive imagination. Even when she would tell me that Leo had climbed into bed with me and was hiding under the duvet by my feet, I didn't let it get to me. It's just harmless play, I would say to myself. And then I would give myself a mental pat on the back for being so sensible and grown up about it. There was a time I would have freaked out about invisible little boys crawling into bed with me, but not now. No, now I was a fearless mum. Go me. After a few weeks, a new friend appeared to my daughter. Her name was Sarah. Of course, we couldn't see her. Just like that cheeky little bed-stealing scamp Leo. So now there were two. Fabulous. But just like she had an actual real friend called Leo, she also knows a Sarah, her dance teacher. So again, we just put it down to her imagination. All was well in the world with Leo and Sarah. They would chase around the house, or have imaginary water balloon fights, and hardly do anything creepy like perch on windowsills during the night to watch us sleep.
Ugh, that is unsettling. That would bother me.
Then, Back in October, we had my husband's parents over for dinner. We were enjoying a nice family dinner when out of nowhere my daughter starts talking about her friends, except now there are 3. Now there is a Clément. She does not know a Clément. There is no one by that name at her school. I checked. He's not a character from one of her books, nor from any of the cartoons she watches. I have no explanation for Clément, and she is not sure who he is either, really. Leo and Sarah are brother and sister, but Clément is just naughty. That's all we know about him. I would have much preferred him to be funny or silly, but no. All he is naughty. Great. And then she just blurts out, "And you know Leo is dead. Sarah killed him. Dead like your granddad, Mummy." My mother-in-law and I just stared at each other, not saying a word, but safe to say we knew what we were both thinking. What the actual fuck? My lovely husband senses my absolute horror at what my beautiful angel has just announced at the dinner table and tries to come to the rescue. But it's just pretend, darling, isn't it? He's okay, really. He's not really dead, he says. No, Daddy, he's really dead. Sarah killed him, she merrily replies in between 2 mouthfuls of chips. I felt a bit sick at this point and was not looking forward to sharing my bedroom with my daughter and her new mates at bedtime. Yes, my nearly 4-year-old still sleeps in our room. Long story for another time.
Yes, I totally understand. I had a cousin who, up through his 30s, well, actually, that's a completely different situation.
Here's another creepy bit. As we were getting ready for bed, she starts talking about them again, this time adding that we have an angry lady called Violet living in our attic space. Violet is always cross and has purple lips. A fun fact about our attic space is it's not actually closed off by a wall. It just has a see-through banister to stop anything falling out, so I can see everything in our attic that overlooks my bed. I now know I'm never sleeping again. Awesome. So I said, "Sweetheart, can we not talk about them now? They're only pretend, they're not real." What she said next and how she said it will probably haunt me forevermore. Her face dropped into a scowl. She came very close to my face, squinted her eyes and said, "They are real." Then started laughing and added, "They're shouting, Mummy. They're always shouting."
Pants change in aisle 3.
As my daughter grew up, we heard less and less about her invisible friends, but I must admit not a night goes by that I don't look up in the attic space and imagine an angry Violet staring back at me. My daughter never really spoke of her dead playmates again, and we were blessed with another little girl a year after. This brings the story to the present day. My children are 7 and 4. A few weeks ago I heard them chanting in the playroom. I thought it was odd, so I went to check on them. They'd made a circle of toys, and in the centre of the circle was their Woody doll, you know, from Toy Story.
Is that the one with Herbert Marshall in it? Or is it the one with Van Heflin and Ida Lupino?
I asked them what they're up to. My youngest answered, "Oh, we're just trying to summon the Woody demon. I heard the doll speak by himself a few days ago, and now I want him to do it again." So it appears we have a haunted Woody doll that speaks by himself, and my daughters were trying to summon whatever demon inhabits him. I repeat, my kids are 7 and 4. They shouldn't know what a demon is, let alone how to summon one, and how they knew what to chant. Pure gibberish to me, but now I'm scared it was Latin or some demonic shit. It's absolutely beyond me. My eldest is a sleepwalker. No offence to sleepwalkers, but it's creepy and personally freaks me out. But either way, she's our child and it's kind of part of the deal that we look after her. And so, our bedroom door is always open, just in case she goes wandering at night. The layout to our house is pretty basic. One big bedroom on one side, a long hallway and another bedroom on the other side. So if we leave both doors open, they can see us and we can see them. and most of all, hear them if they get up during the night. This is exactly what my eldest did one evening last week. My husband got up and checked on her to make sure she wasn't sleepwalking. She wasn't, she just needed the loo. When she came out, she looked at him and said, "You know at night there's a black and white person that paces in front of your bedroom door, right? And also, there's a brown-haired lady that sits in the bath all night." My husband just told her she'd probably dreamt it, but she insisted she sees them most nights. She wasn't frightened, just pointing it out to us in case we weren't aware. Now, my lovely husband got pretty freaked out by this and knew I'd hate it, so didn't tell me for a few days. But then he thought he'd share that information with me at bedtime, just before he turned over and went to sleep.
Cheers, mate.
Since being aware of all this, I've heard loud banging in my attic that I cannot explain. I've even filmed it. It's on my phone. If you'd like to have a look, I promise you it's not bollocks, it's all 100% true.
I absolutely would like to see it. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're about to show you is real, not a work of fiction, not a hoax. If you are easily upset by disturbing content, or if you are a spiritually sensitive person, you may want to fast forward a bit, following this countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll film.
I don't like it. What is that? Oh, but what's going on? What's happening? Look, it's stopped. Oh, I don't like it. At first I thought it was a bird, but no way that was a bird. Also, fun fact, the cat starts purring right when the loud bangs happen.
You know, it's a common misconception that cats purr only when they're happy. They purr to regulate their emotions.
Exactly. So hurt kitties purr and scared kitties purr.
And kitties who've seen a ghost also purr.
Yes, it's something to do with the frequency of the purr having soothing or healing or restorative properties. I don't know. But there it is. Make of it what you will.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us, Emma. Be sure to check back with Octoberpod if the paranormal activity becomes more severe. If you'd like to hear more from Emma, you can find her and her friends on Spine Chillers and Serial Killers, wherever you get podcasts.
There you go.
It's me again, Amber Jourdan, the classiest witch you know. Well, I've searched the globe for Edward October, who, I assume, has skipped town on a pilgrimage to one of his favorite spooky locations. I decided that if I'm ever going to find Ed, I'm not going to be able to do it with my detective skills. I'm going to have to use magic. That's why I've taken my portable podcasting mic here to the BROCKEN. It's the highest peak in northern Germany, and one of the best places in the world for casting spells. Now, let's see. I have my summoning circle arranged just so. If this spell works as I hope it should, the spirits will tell me exactly where to find Edward October. Ghost fiends and furies, old friends and new, I've searched the world over, there's nothing left to do. Serpents and spiders, tail of rat, summon Edward October on the wings of a bat. Knock on wood, it's time to respond. Send us a message from regions beyond. Goblins and ghoulies from last Halloween, bring Edward here, make him be seen. Creepies and crawlies, odors that offend, let my quest at last come to an end. Wizards and witches, wherever you dwell, give us a sign by ringing the bell. Well, that didn't work as well as I'd hoped. Perhaps if I... Speaking of magic, how'd I get cell phone signal all the way up here? I bet the international roaming charges are gonna be murder. Hello? It's Ed! What do you mean? I've been looking for you this whole time. Did you even read my new script? Well, how the hell was I supposed to know there was a silent P? Now wait one damn minute. Where have you been all this time? I've looked everywhere. Possum gravy? Ew. You're making that up, right? Okay. Okay, Ed. I'll tell them. Sure? Yep. Cool beans. Yeah, I'll jump on the next plane. And don't forget to write me that check. Smell you later, Ed. Well, you won't believe it. Edward went to the International Gravy Festival in Paris, Tennessee. After sampling the cutting edge of biscuits and gravy arts and sciences, he returned to the Octoberpod Ranch in the Great Smoky Mountains to recover from a food coma by binge-watching every vampire movie known to exist on VHS. I would have found him when I was there, but he's been hidden away in a secret chamber beneath the sub-basement of the ranch, which he's fashioned into a vast library for dead physical media formats. Legend has it that you could get lost for days down there. And if you do get lost, you must solve the riddle of the maliceful 1,000-year-old hermit who is rumored to dwell there. Anywho, I hope you've enjoyed this trip around the world with Octoberpod. Ed and I, as well as all of our indie podcasting besties, will be back in 2 weeks with the Rogue Transmissions halfway to Halloween hullabaloo. It's sure to be a hell-raising Halloween party, well calculated to chase away the springtime blues for all of us spooky people who make Halloween a way of life. Well, I've got a plane to catch. Until next time, stay spooky. Mesami. Ah, fuck it. Smell you later.
Stick around after the credits for a brief word from some of our fellow indie podcasters creators, and friends. There may even be some bloopers, outtakes, and bonus content as well. You have been listening to Octoberpod. Octoberpod is produced, edited, and directed by Edward October. The series co-producers are MJ McAddams and Amber Jourdan. Logo and banner graphics by Jessica Good. Edward October character design by Nick Calavera. Select still photography courtesy of unsplash.com. Select music cues by Dr. Dreamchip and various other stock music and sound effects courtesy of freesound.org. Music from Bigfoot Apocalypse and Thorax, theme from Octoberpod, composed by Nico Vitezi. All other images, music, and FX cues, except where noted, are sourced from within the public domain. Follow us on YouTube at Octoberpod Home Video, on Instagram, and the app I still call Twitter at Octoberpod VHS, and on TikTok and Blue Sky at Octoberpod. Or find us and all of our links on the World Wide Web at octoberpodvhs.com. For business inquiries or story submissions, email octoberpod@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this program, we'd be very pleased if you told your friends about us. And while you're at it, write us a 5-star or equivalent review wherever you're listening. The man who spoke to you was Mr. Edward October, a very gifted horror writer who can scare you shitless. Her imagination is second to none. Fantastic Victorian ghost stories. Jane Nightshade, the horror author who's been called the Countess of Creep and the Queen of Indie Horror. A Screamful of Ghosts. Serial Encounters. The Drowning Game. And coming later this year, Ghosts Never Leave and Hellbound Highway. The horror fiction of Jane Nightshade has been collected in more than 3 books, with tales in over 40 anthologies, magazines, and podcasts. Enter a world of the macabre, the strange, and the quietly terrifying with the horror fiction of Jane Nightshade. Available wherever online books are sold.
Do you have to throw on your favorite true crime podcast before bed in order to fall asleep? Same. And it's the very reason that I created Serial Napper. My name is Nikki Young, and I'm here to lull you to sleep or perhaps to give you nightmares with some of the craziest true crime stories that you've never heard of. Each episode of Serial Napper features a different true crime story told succinctly the way that it happened. Just the facts, ma'am. My focus is on unsolved crimes that need more attention, cold cases, and wrongful convictions. While true crime shows can sometimes be graphic in nature, I ensure that the story is told in a way that is respectful to the victims and their families. Now, when it's time for bed, you can look forward to 30 minutes of well-researched and detailed case files while you get your beauty sleep. Find Serial Napper on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Sweet dreams.
How many times have you said, I need a new podcast, but can't find one? Well, let me introduce you to Tis Yourself, the podcast you probably never heard of, but has some of your favourite TV, movie and musical stars. Like, are you a Friends fan? Kate Donovan came by to talk about dating Jennifer Aniston and then breaking up with her while they were filming. Not a Friends fan? What about Peaky Blinders? Want to know what it's like to be Tommy Shelby's right-hand man? Hacky Lee came by and he was telling me all about playing Johnny Dogs. And then, of course, everyone's a Brooklyn Nine-Nine fan. You have to hear what it's like to play Scully. Joel McKinnon Miller is on this season of Tis Yourself. So why don't you swing by, see if there's an episode you might like, and it'll be the new podcast you've just discovered.
Oh, thank God my dog didn't start barking until after. I really liked that. Edward went to the International Gravy Festival in London, Kentucky. I'm going to do it one other way just to give you options. Horned toads and lizards. That was pretty much the same, and my dog's still barking. Okay, we're gonna go see why he's barking. Come back, maybe. Yeah. Purgatory Lab plays bagpipes and lapping lakeside waves. Well, you won't believe it. Edward went to the International Gravy Festival in Scotland. County, North Carolina? Horned toads and lizards, fiddle and smote. I don't like that. Hold on. Flare. What kind of flare? Horned toads and lizards, fiddles and smote. No? Okay. One more time. I'm going to get it right. That did not flow well. Much like gravy with sausage. Okay. The elusive brontosaurus-like creature known as Mokele Mbembe. Possum gravy? Ew! You're making that up, right? Ew. Really? Ew. Edward went to the International Gravy Festival in Vienna, Virginia. Like, is that where Vienna sausages are conceptualized for the gravy in the festival? Vienna, Virginia. We're going to try a couple other things here. Hopefully you like all of these things for the clips show at the end. Oh my god, I hope that doesn't make it to the clip show at the end. How embarrassing for me. Anywho, I hope you've enjoyed. So much for me starting back at anywho. Fuck that. Jeez. Anywho, I hope you've enjoyed this trip around the world with Octoberpod. Ed and I, and all of our indie podcasting besties, will be back in 2 weeks with the Rogue Transmissions halfway to Halloween hullabaloo. It's sure to be a hell-raising Halloween party, well calculated to chase away the springtime blues for all of us spooky people who make Halloween a way of life. Well, I've got a plane to catch. Until next time, stay spooky, and thanks for coming to sit with me for a spell, or run around the world with me for a spell. You know how it is. Yeah. Bye. Well, I've got a plane to catch. Until next time, stay spooky and stay... No, I don't... I might cut that out. Shit. I guess I'm done ad-libbing, because I like the fucking around with the maze on me. I also like the time where I was trying to say maze on me, and I fucked around with it too. But anyway, do as you will. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this episode. Until next time, stay spooky, and thanks for coming to sit with me for a spell. Because, we're your favorite witches on Witches Talking Tarot, and we are the classiest witches you know. No, you should probably not use that. No, I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna stop while I'm ahead. Bye, Ed.